Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the etiquettes in regards to Eid and some of the rulings regard to the Eid prayer. One is how the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in a hadith of Atiyah, she said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam urged everyone and recommended for everyone in the household to attend Eid prayer, including women in their menses. And he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as for those who are in their menses, not to perform the prayer, but they can also attend the supplications, because there is a barakah, there is a blessing in the supplications made, and that is a blessing that even those who are in their menses should not miss out on. So the children needs to be also taken to the prayer, to the Eid prayer. And when it comes to the Eid prayer, there is also another note connected to it, and that has to do with the place. The Prophet ﷺ, meaning the place where the Eid prayer is to be performed, and what is known as the musalla. The musalla is usually the open space other than the masjid where the Eid prayer is to be performed. Like now here in the States, people usually would rent parks, and they would go and perform the Eid prayers in the parks. Some, they would, for instance, rent convention centers, because especially in big cities, parks are not big enough. Congregations are so big, they usually go and rent convention centers. All of these are along the line of what the Prophet ﷺ used to do. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri said that the Prophet ﷺ used to always walk to the musalla for each Eid prayer, whether that is al-Fitr, the one that follows Ramadan, or Adha that follows Hajj. The Prophet ﷺ would go and perform the Eid prayer out in the musalla, not in his masjid. Although keep in mind, the prayer in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ is recorded as 1,000 prayer, Yet the Prophet ﷺ leaves his masjid and goes and perform the prayer out in the musalla. Some of the scholars, like Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, is of the opinion that Eid prayer has to be performed in the musalla, except when there is a reason why not to. Reasons like what? Some of the non-Muslim communities don't really have a musalla to pray. Then the only place for them to pray is actually in their masjid. In some instances, you have rain, pouring rain, that is impossible for anybody to pray out in the open space. In some cases, in some localities, they have snow storms. They can't go out and pray in the open space. In some cases, you have harmful heat outside. The heat is excruciating, because the idea is to perform the prayer. Not that the focus will be on the harm might be caused to those who would attend the prayer due to either the rain or the heat or. In those cases, then praying in the masjid becomes the solution. But primarily, the prayer of Eid is highly recommended that is to be performed in the musalla, meaning other than the masjid, either that is in the parks or convention centers or places of that sort. So this is when it comes to the place. How about another thing that is related with the rulings or the etiquettes of the Eid is the takbir. In regards, there are two types. You have the takbir for Eid al-Fitr, and which is the Eid that follows Ramadan. The takbir starts from the eve of the Eid, meaning the minute the Eid is decided to be tomorrow, from the sunset, the eve of it, you start making your takbir. And the form of takbir, it has so many different forms. One of the common and easy ones is for you to say Allahu Akbar 3 times, followed by La ilaha illallah. Then Allahu Akbar 3 times, followed by Walillahi alhamd. In other words, you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. This is the takbir. And this takbir in regards to Eid al-Fitr, it continues from the eve of the Eid all the way until the Imam starts doing the khutbah. The minute the Imam comes out, then that's when everybody stops making the takbir and they would not go back to it. However, when it comes to Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, pardon, the Eid of Hajj, it starts from the day, the Fajr of Arafah, meaning you pray the Fajr of the day of Arafah, and you start making your takbir all the way until the 13th of Dhul Hijjah. Meaning that when you make your takbir on the day of Arafah, all the way until the 13th, after each and every prayer, this is called like a global, a larger scope of takbir. But there is the specific takbir, and that has to do with the Eid, that pertains to the Eid prayer. And that one starts from the eve of the Eid. Again, just like the eve of the Eid for Fitr, the eve of the Eid for Adha. Because these two are a little bit confusing, and it's very important that we make the distinction. There is a larger scope of making the takbir, and that one starts from, this is, we're talking about the Eid al-Adha, it starts from the Fajr of Arafah, which is the 9th. After every prayer, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, after every prayer you make that form of takbir. 3 times Allahu Akbar, 1 time La ilaha illallah, 3 times Allahu Akbar, and 1 times La ilaha walillahi alhamd. And that happens after each and every prayer. But when it comes to the takbir that has to do with the Eid, that one starts from the eve again of the Eid. Tomorrow is Eid al-Adha, then the eve of it, meaning of sunset. And it is not exclusive only to the prayer. It's the whole time, and wherever you are. You can do it at home, do it in your car, you drive in, wherever you are, in the mall. You do it constantly. You do Allahu Akbar. That's the best dhikr you do at that time. And it continues all the way. It does not stop like it does with Eid al-Fitr. As soon as the Imam starts the khutbah, you stop. But it goes past that, and it goes all the way until the end of last day of the 13th, which is the last day of the days of Tashriq. This is when it comes to the takbir in of itself. Now we come to the last point that has to do with the actual performance of the prayer in of itself. When you go to the musalla, if your salah is going to be performed outside in the open space, in the convention center, whatever place that be, there is no adhan, first of all, and there is no iqamah for the Eid prayer. There is no adhan and no iqamah. You don't say Allah qad qamat as-salah. No, there is no adhan, no iqamah for Eid prayer. Whether that is you perform it in the masjid or you pray it, perform it in the musalla or a convention center. طيب? But when it comes to also when you come to the masjid, if you pray the Eid prayer in the masjid, then you ought to pray Tahiyyat al-Masjid. This is a way to greet the masjid. You pray 2 rak'ahs or more. But if you pray in that outside in the open, there is no Tahiyyat al-Masjid. There is no nafila prayer prior to the Eid or after the Eid prayer. There is no extra voluntary prayer you do before or after the Eid. On the musalla, provided that you pay attention, the distinction is in the place decides whether you can or cannot do the extra voluntary prayer. If you're in the masjid, you can. If you are in the musalla, you don't pray either before or after the prayer. How do you perform the prayer in of itself? There are 2 rak'ahs. In the first rak'ah, there is, as soon as you say takbirat al-ihram, as usual, Allahu Akbar, and you start your prayer, then it follows with 7 times saying Allahu Akbar. Of course, the Imam says it, and those behind him, they will repeat it as well behind him. So 7 times you will say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, 7 times. And then you start reciting Al-Fatiha. And then Al-A'la. Sabbih isma rabbika Al-A'la. In the second rak'ah, when you come back up, then after you stand back up and you say the takbir 5 times instead of 7 in first. Second one is 5. You say 5 times Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And each time you pause for those behind you. This is for the Imam, for those behind you to also say it as well. And then you recite Al-Fatiha and Al-Ghashiyah. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية. This is what the Prophet ﷺ used to do in each Eid prayer. Question, 2 questions related to that. If the Imam forgets, for instance, to say the takbirat, and he was reminded, because it happens all the time, most times people are not used to saying the takbirat before they start reciting Al-Fatiha, so they would skip directly to reciting Al-Fatiha. But if they are reminded, and then they go back to it and they fix it, or they forgot it and they went ahead and then without the takbirat, at the end of the prayer, before they say Assalamu alaikum, they need to make 2 sajdas. And those are 2 sajdas to mend the mistake that was made in the salah. Because that takbirat are sunnah, recommended, highly recommended sunnah, that if you don't do them, then you have to make up for that mistake by making 2 sajdas before you say Assalamu alaikum. Inna. A last one has to do with, and this is very common, it happens all the time, is for people who usually are running late. And when they arrive either to the musalla or to the masjid, they find that the congregation had already prayed the Eid prayer. And mind you, when it comes to the Eid prayer, it is different than the Jum'ah prayer in the order in which there is in the prayer and the khutbah. In Jum'ah, you do the khutbah first and then you pray the 2 rak'ahs. In Eid, it's the other way around. You pray the 2 rak'ahs and then you do the khutbah. So this is a little bit quite the opposite from each other when it comes, if you were to compare the khutbah of the Eid prayer and the Jum'ah prayer. Last part is when a person comes in late and missed on the prayer. 2 solutions. And both of them, the fatwa comes from the Sahaba, not from anybody else. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said that if you arrive and you find that you missed the actual Eid prayer, pray 4 rak'ahs. Just 4 regular rak'ahs without the 7 takbir and 5 takbir. No, just 4 different 4 rak'ahs. And all of them just to make up for the Eid prayer. This is if you pray in the same location where the congregation had performed and you wanted to attend the khutbah. If you want to go home and pray it with your family, you can. And this is the recommendation of Anas ibn Malik. He says that if you can go back to your home, you can actually pray it the same way that you're supposed to pray it with the jama'ah. And that is to pray 2 rak'ahs. And in the first one, you say 7 takbirat after takbirat al-ihram with Fatiha and Surah Al-A'la. And in the second rak'ah, you after you stand up, you say Allahu Akbar 5 times, then Al-Fatiha, followed by Surah Al-Ghashiyah. This way you can you have the 2 options. Either if you want to make up that prayer on the same location as the congregation, you only pray 4 rak'ahs. But if you want to go home and with your family, you can also pray it as it is usually performed. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who follow the best of the guidance. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.